Good evening, Madam Mayor. We're live.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Tuesday, July 28th, Electric Utility City Commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo,
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso,
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell,
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy. I don't see him yet. Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
Good.
If everyone would please stand for the pledge led by Commissioner Robinson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. All right, any additions, deletions, or reordering, Madam Clerk?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, then we'll move right on to public participation of non-agended items and consent agenda. Do you have any?
I do. I have two comment cards.
Okay.
Honorable Mayor and this is from Ramsey Stevens. Honorable Mayor and Commissioners, as a member of the Electrical Utility Advisory Board, I ask you yet again to respond to our formal request to discuss the potential for a demand response program, a community solar program, and ways to faster realize the economic potential of the Southeastern National Marine Renewable Energy Center. We are very fortunate to have an exceptionally professional and competent utility management team led by Director Liberty. It is undeniable that our utility is operationally stronger today than it was yesterday and will be even stronger tomorrow because of their work. However, this does not mean we can afford to accept the status quo. Our utility and our community need every potential win. As highlighted by your last discussion regarding our utility's value, there are a lot of people who will still ask, what does our utility do for me? As a member of your advisory board, all I'm asking is for the opportunity for us to help you to answer this question. All sincerely, Ramsey Stevens. And I have a second one from Anna Schaefer of 620 North Lakeside Drive. Dear Madam Mayor and Commissioners, as a business owner, landlord of several one-person household apartments, and now customer with solar, I've come across the minimum bill requirement for electric on many occasions. I've looked into it and talked to other residents and would like to urge you to review and hopefully come to the conclusion to eliminate this requirement altogether on the basis of the following arguments. This requirement was implemented by the 2011 Commission when rates were much higher than today, and city officials still use the explanation that everybody should contribute to keeping the lights on, so to say. However, everybody pays the customer service fee and then a per kilowatt fee, and only some, namely those who don't consume a lot of electricity, are charged for power they do not use or need. As a city, we should be energy conscious in reducing our carbon footprint, not encouraging customers to consume more. From my tenants, I've heard about another problem. Most new accounts start on the 1st of the month, but the first bill is generated around the 12th. These people have to pay the minimum bill, even if they haven't consumed enough energy by then. The same if you close an account at the end of the month. Furthermore, FPL does not have a minimum bill requirement, and the bottom line is that everybody should pay the same rates and not be punished for not having as high a bill as others. I've lived here since 2003, and yes, I've noticed the upgrades in our electric system, as well as a reduction in rates since the 2011 electric resolution, and I want to thank you and Director Liberty for these improvements. Please take a closer look at the numbers. I think the impact of eliminating this rate might not be as staggering as one thinks, because these customers still pay the customer service fee and per kilowatt hour rate. It's good to hear from Mr. Liberty that the electric utility is growing and adds to the general fund. Maybe this is a good time to revisit this very unjust rate and solve many customer requests for fairness. Lastly, I think the idea of a credit card fee is good and might make up for eliminating the minimum bill. Personally, I love the convenience of paying online and would just change to paying directly from a bank account. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. And that's the end of the comments for this meeting.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'd like to move on to approval of the minutes. May I have a motion?
Moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All
Aye.
those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. We'll move on to our next meeting. All right. All right, let's call to meeting, the special city commission meeting on the LDRs and the comp plan by teleconference. It's Tuesday, July 28th. And I'll ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triola,
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso,
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell,
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy,
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
Thank you.
We do the pledge again, or are we good with the pledge?
No. We're good. We've already
good.
done it.
All right, then let's move right on to our public hearings. There are 2 items on the agenda, gentlemen, and they are both second readings. We went through the presentations on the last one, but we do have, I don't have additions. We have one addition.
We do have one addition, Madam
Okay,
Mayor.
I'm sorry, I didn't have.
That's my bad. I apologize. We did, yesterday I received from the Florida League of Cities a request asking for a designation of a voting delegate for the meeting that they're having on the 14th of August. And so I added that to under new business item C.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we'll go back again to our second readings of 2 ordinances. And they are the same ordinances, I guess, that are applied to under new business as well, under A and B. Okay, we've got item A. City Attorney, would you read the ordinance for me, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, ordinance number 2020-05 of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending policies in the future land use element of the city's comprehensive plan relating to downtown mixed use and transit-oriented development, future land use, FLU designations, including modifications to the FLU development requirements, limitations, and general location descriptions, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
So
I'll
moved.
entertain a motion. So moved by Commissioner Maxwell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by the Vice Mayor. Do we have any other follow-up? I know we had the presentation and Q&A last time, folks. Did you have anything else that you'd like to follow up with? I don't see any hands. No? Okay, we've got a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
And all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All
Aye.
those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all.
Aye.
Okay,
Can
I'm sorry, who?
I comment?
Well, we
Just-
had the vote already. You had a
I'm
time.
not, okay. I'd just like to thank the staff for the work they did on the fencing and the turf and impervious surface. That's all.
No, good. Yeah, and just do that. If you have a comment to make before we go to the vote, just let me know. That's okay. All right, moving on to ordinance B. City Attorney, would you read the ordinance, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2020-06 of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending the city's comprehensive plan future land use map through a large-scale map amendment from the future land use FLU designations of mixed use east and mixed use west to the transit-oriented development FLU designation on property generally located along the Lake Worth Road corridor between Boutwell Road and North A Street, and more fully described in Exhibit A, providing that conflicting ordinances are repealed, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Maxwell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, any public comment cards, Madam Clerk?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner Hardy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, William, what is the max density in this area that we're discussing here, basically between the roundabout and Boutwell? After these changes will go through. And I know that there's still the zoning code on top of it, but if in the future we were to align the zoning code closely with what we have here in the flume, what would the max density be in that area?
Well, they're essentially the same. And as we did with the Bohemian, the maximum density through our incentives is 100 units an acre. The approval of this change tonight also allows us to complete the entitlement process for the Bohemian project.
Okay.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor and a second. We've already stated that, no, I'm sorry. Commissioner Robinson.
I just am certainly going to vote for this, but I would like to know that we're making every effort to contact the property owners in the county that are within our boundaries to be annexed into the city. If they don't know the benefits of being a citizen of Lake Worth Beach, I would hope that staff reaches out to them.
Thank you. We've got a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're gonna go on to item 3. This is the one we added to the agenda.
No,
Does
no. This is new business. It has the third one.
Oh, it's under new business. Okay.
Right, yeah.
So new business. Now, these are the ordinance relating to what we've just heard, correct?
No, these are new.
No,
ones.
this is 2 ones. Okay, sorry. Where's my backup? Okay. Gotcha. New business, ordinance number 2020-11. City Attorney, would you read the ordinance, please, for me?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance 2020-11, an ordinance of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Administration, Division 1 in general, Sections 2-4, 2-7, 2-10.2, and 2-11.3 related to the application fees, and amending Chapter 23, Land Development Regulations by amending Article 1, General Provisions, Division 1 generally, Sections 23.1-5 and 23.1-6 related to official maps. Article 1, General Provisions, Division 2, Definitions, Section 23.1-12, Definitions, Article 2, Administration, Division 3, Permits, Section 23.2-3-30, Site Plan Review, Article 3, Zoning Districts, Section 23.3-2, Official Zoning Map, Article 4, Development Standards, Section 23.4-4, Fences, Walls, and Gates, Article 4, Development Standards, Section 23.4-10, Off-Street Parking, Article 4, Development Standards, Section 23.4-19, Outdoor Storage, Article 4, Development, Article 6, Environmental Regulations, Section 23.6-1, subsection C3, Landscape Regulations of the City's Code of Ordinances, and providing for severability, the repeal of laws and conflicts, codification, and an effective date.
So moved.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I'm just kidding. We've got a motion on the floor in a second. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Do we have any public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
I just first of all want to say thank you very much to staff and to our planning and zoning for going through all of these things. I know we've addressed several issues over the last year and making some of these a lot easier to handle both administratively and of course for most importantly the residents of this community. So we've got a couple of hands up, so we've got some discussions. Let's get to it. Who's up first? Ms. Selena?
Staff does have a presentation, Madam Mayor, and we can
Oh,
walk
I'm
you through the
sorry.
changes if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, that would be very nice. Thank you. You guys okay to hold on until, or do you want to ask something before she makes the presentation?
Well, my comment might be addressed in staff's comment. So I would like to just thank them again, but with the emphasis of parking, on-street parking, I want even more emphasis on using our alleys to have rear entrance rather than front-loaded homes in the future. We don't utilize our alleys, and that would benefit the parking on the front of the properties. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Hardy. Did you want to wait or did you want to speak now?
I'll wait.
Okay, thank you. All right, Erin, would you like to go?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The item before you is ordinance 2020-11. I'm going to walk you through our the proposed changes. Just for clarification, as you recall, this is part of the series of amendments that we discussed with you at a workshop in March of this year. Both of these set of amendments was approved unanimously by HRPB and by the Planning and Zoning Board, and it touches on all the sections that Christy read as part of the ordinance title, which I will spare you from reading again. So moving into it, the first part is Chapter 2. And as you know, you have an annual schedule of fees that you adopt every year by resolution. So these were a few fees that were in Chapter 2 and not in our land development regulations that apply to some of our processes that are just being removed and are being referenced to the annual fee schedule for clarity and consistency with existing processes. The next section relates to official maps. We're very pleased to announce that we're going to have both an official zoning map and an official future land use map that are managed digitally. We're going to be cutting edge among a handful of cities and counties in the state of Florida that is doing this. So we're very excited about that. Several sections relate to the adoption of the digital zoning and future land use map. This will be a GIS-based data layer that will become the official map. And therefore, when you look online at the map, the interactive map online, residents will be looking at the official zoning map. So it's very exciting. We amended our definition section. So the main, I guess, lift here was related to building lot coverage, overall lot coverages, and really addresses permeable and impermeable surfaces, what that means, what they entail. And you'll see that this discussion here is also referenced in other subsections that link to the definitions. Moving on to permits, this is clarifying site plan review. When does something go to site plan review? When is it a minor site plan review? When is it a major site plan review? We wanted to really clarify that the application of when something was a minor or major site plan and make sure that was easily understood by applicants. Again, zoning, the official zoning map. This is references the digital zoning map. This is another section where it's referenced in our code that we're updating for consistency. Fences, walls, and gates. Again, this is the other main lift of this particular ordinance. The first was the permeable, impermeable surfaces. Now the fences, walls, and gates. This is discussions for we regulate fences, walls, and gates by use. And there was clarification with regards to visibility triangles, as well as stacking for if you do have a perimeter fence and a parking lot, there is a minimal stacking requirement. So we minimize any potential automobile accidents. So these are the development standards with regards to off-street parking. This again relates back to the permeable and impermeable discussion. And this provides clarity with regards to the types of materials that can be used for these spaces. Outdoor storage, this provides clarity of where outdoor storage may occur. And it also provides clarity on some stormwater requirements for outdoor storage. Our MPDS permit and the building code does have some of these items in there, but it needs, it's easier for applicants if it's upfront as part of the code and they understand what's required early so that they can make that as part of their site plan. Landscape regulations, this is part of the fencing component, and this deals with dumpster landscaping enclosures and non-conforming dumpster conditions, and it gives staff a little bit more administrative wiggle room to help those existing situations by providing flexibility, allowing the development review official to administratively approve maybe a reduction of a parking space to accommodate screening of a dumpster area. Staff recommends approval, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erin. Okay, Commissioner Hardy.
Thank you. I appreciate the hard work that was done. Can I ask you about the, for lack of a better word, setback requirement for electronic security gates and keypad or call boxes?
Sure.
I mean, could
Oh,
you
I'm
just,
sorry.
yep, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So basically, when you have a, for example, a good example of this is at the one. You have a new condominium development. There's parking underneath. They will have a gate with a call box. When you exit the gate or the call box, and if you exit directly onto the right of way, you don't have any visibility. And then there's a risk that the gate will actually close on you. So in most suburban conditions, you want approximately 2 car lengths in or out. But because we're not in a suburban condition, we're in a more urban condition, staff proposed the 25-foot setback for the gate to reflect our environment and our built environment.
At the one, are we having issues with stacking in the right of way?
I believe it's set back at the one. William, maybe you can speak more to that, but just as an example.
It is set back somewhat. Keep in mind,
Not 25 feet though, right?
it's not 25 feet, but keep in mind that this is a standard that would be set for all types of gates. And we do have some issues. I think it's set back actually twice as far as that. At the village of Lake Osborne and village of Lake Worth. I believe they're actually 50 feet from the right of way in both those instances. And we don't have a consistent standard. So we're proposing that you just 1 car length be the standard. If a developer would like to have more than that, they could do that.
Okay, I get, here's, and well, you kind of know my kind of take. I don't really think that we should be requiring developers to use more of the property that they own, that we want to be as economically productive as possible for car stuff, whether that's car storage in the way of, parking spots, or whether that's, the space that's required for cars to navigate throughout the property. And I haven't seen an issue with this, and I really don't think there is, a huge issue with that here. And I think, and Ms. Sita, you touched on this, that the requirement for stacking distance inside the property is more a suburban idea than it is an urban one. And I know, we're talking about degrees here because, the requirement here isn't as onerous as it would be, in a suburban area. But I just don't see it as necessary. And, I see it as potentially making, the very limited space that we have in the city less productive. And so I really wish this weren't in here. And because some of these things are related to each other, there was a requirement, and I can't remember if it's this item or the next item, to, for the developer to provide separate entrance ways for people who live there versus visitors. Is it this item or the next? I have it marked up, this physical copy, but I remember
This item.
it's this item. Yeah, again, that's and I get that it says where feasible, but then that just kind of leaves a lot up to, who's determining what feasible is. And what standards are we going to use to determine, when it's feasible to provide separate entrances? Again, that's more, hey, developer, please use your extremely valuable land that there's a limited amount of here in the 7 square mile city for car stuff. And so I can't really get behind that. Most other things here I appreciate, but this particular one, it's an issue for me.
Well, I would like to also bring to mind that part of this is coming out as a response to some of the requirements that have been placed on our projects by Palm Beach County Fire Rescue, who are our fire provider. And there is a life safety issue in both respects. One is that roadways can be blocked if the car trying to get into a project has nowhere to get off the right of way to access the lockbox. Secondarily, the fire department often asks far more access, ingress, egress from gated communities than the city would like to see. So we have tried to come up with a compromise that our restrictions are less onerous, as you mentioned, than the county, but also facilitate the life safety issues that have been raised by Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. With no standards at all, we are sort of beholden to what fire rescue requires of developers, which has not always worked in our favor.
May I follow up?
Yeah, quick follow-up, sure.
William, you went to a great school that was headed up by a wonderful woman, Ms. Plater-Zybert. What would she and her husband say about potentially onerous requirements coming from fire departments? I know this is kind of a running theme among urbanists.
Well, my preference, based on the 3 universities they've been, we wouldn't have gated communities, but we don't have that choice in Florida.
Sure.
And so we're trying to, like I said, find a happy medium where we can facilitate allowing a gated community or a gate, but also not have it be a runway in some respects off the right of way to the gate box. In some respects, Palm Beach County Fire has wanted guest, tenant ingress, and then 24 feet of space to leave a project. So there's impossible to meet that.
Right. And so, I guess what I'm getting at is that, folks who call themselves new urbanists, tend to moan and groan about requirements that come from the fire department as being potentially too onerous and kind of ruining the urban environment. Right. And that's not, just me talking. That's like a whole school of thought that, a lot of people who are in planning and architecture have. Right. And so I'm wondering, do we have to codify these requests in our code? And I'm totally with you on gated communities, although, where I see this being used right now, the one is not so much a gated community, it's a building with a gated parking lot. But do we, must we codify these things in our code?
It would give us some legal standing when we try to argue with Palm Beach County Fire that this is in our codes that we think is appropriate for our city, and to require more is not in our best interest. I'll remind you too, the mid will have a gate, and so will 2 other projects that will come before you soon.
Right.
But it's
right. And so I don't expect to win here, but I just wish that we didn't have this requirement in here. I don't find it to be necessary. I think it again it's going to affect the way people design their projects, and I think it's probably going to make them less urban in nature. And not really a fan, but okay. Everything else in here, for this item, seems okay to me. I don't have an issue with anything else in here.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson?
Just had a question on the permeable surface, whether turf or artificial grass is part of that.
Well, Commissioner, we haven't gotten quite there yet. In the next round of amendments, we're bringing back our landscape code, because artificial turf really lives in the landscape code. But the definitions here are setting up for that. We have been working on that component of code in conjunction with these definitions. So this is the first step then to move forward with those amendments. We are drafting code as we speak.
Okay. Commissioner, Vice Mayor? You're on mute.
Aaron and William, I just wanted to thank you for all your hard work and all your staff. I know a lot of work goes into this. Aaron, just for clarity, something had come up about off-street parking and parking in the rear. Don't we have ordinances that any new construction, you try to accommodate some of that parking in the rear alley areas?
I'm going to let William take the lead on that. I know in our thoroughfare design guidelines, we want buildings brought up to the street. We have minimum build 2 lines, and we definitely encourage design wherever the parking is to the rear. We have a lot of design requirements achieving that. I don't believe we have an actual percent requirement, but William, can you speak to that a little bit more?
The way the LDRs work in hand with the historic preservation guidelines and the major thoroughfare guidelines, it is highly encouraged as well as required that the parking be in the back. One of the things that is not conducive to our supporting or encouraging the parking from the back is that many of our alleys are not improved, and some of the projects are so small that they cannot afford to improve the alley to access the parking in the back. We have been successful on 3 projects as of late. One will go to the Planning and Zoning Board, one will stay with staff, and there's another one that are all using the alley as access for their parking. We did also change the LDRs in 2016 or 17 to require an additional back out space so that since our alleys are only 10 feet wide, it's very difficult to get into and out of those parking spaces if they're right on the property line. So we do ask for an additional throat or distance so the cars can get out and in easily when they are parked in the back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardy, follow up?
Yeah, so the major thoroughfare guidelines, do those apply to projects, new construction in neighborhoods, for example, where the project is not along one of the designated major thoroughfares?
No, it does not.
Okay. To Commissioner Robinson's point, in the future, and it's kind of, I guess, a form-based concept here, but I think it would be a good thing if we required basically rear loading whenever possible, especially new construction, single family homes, and things of that nature. And I know that's not necessarily a this item thing. I would hope that in the future, when something comes back, if we can require rear loading rather than front loading of homes, I think that would probably work a lot better.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment cards?
No, we do not.
Seeing there are none, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Excuse me, actually, nay.
Nay.
Sorry.
Okay, motion carries 4-1. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to new business item B. City Attorney, would you read the ordinance, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2020-12, an ordinance of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 23 Land Development Regulations by amending Article 1 General Provisions, Division 2 Definitions, Section 23.1-12 Definitions, Article 3 Zoning Districts, Division 1 Generally, Section 23.3-6 Use Tables, and Article 4 Development Standards, Section 23.4-12 Administrative Uses and Conditional Uses of the City's Code of Ordinances, and providing for severability, the repeal of laws and conflicts, codification, and an effective date.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second, okay. Do we have any public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we have a presentation, Ms. Sita?
Yes, ma'am. I'm happy to share.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so the item before you is ordinance number 2020-12. This is the second set of amendments. We split up the ordinances. This round was a very heavy lift, as you see, and it touched on a lot of issues. So we wanted to create an ordinance that specifically addressed the use and use-related items. Once again, this is part of the series of amendments that were prioritized at the Mark Commission workshop. They were unanimously approved by the HRPB and the Planning and Zoning Board. As Christy read the title, I will not reread it. And these amendments focus on uses, performance standards for uses, and the permitted use table overhaul. So the first component is the definition section. This is this provided clarification on existing use definitions. It also consolidated uses. So I think the best example of what we did here would be in the personal services category. We now have a new use called personal grooming services and day spa. Before we had barbershop, ladies hair salon, nail salon, day spa, something else, and they all had the same review standards, the same review, and they were essentially functionally the same use. So we went through and we really looked at what uses are functionally the same, operate the same, and have the exact same approval processes. And can we consolidate those and develop them into an overall use? Another example of where we did this is our repair and maintenance services. And we have created a new category called repair and maintenance specialty, which can occur in most districts, mixed use districts. And then we have up to our most intensive repair and maintenance major, which can only occur in IPOC. Again, we introduced some new uses specifically relating to microbrewery and distillery. We combined that use. We developed the new use money business services, which is defined in the statute, and we also developed a new specialty storage use. Again, zoning, this is related to the use tables. We went through all the use tables. We added in the new consolidated uses, and we reviewed all the processes. We added and we deleted all the redundant and unnecessary items. This is something that you want to do every so often. And then, let's see, sorry. Here's an example of what your strike through and underline looks like. And then again, P is permitted by right. This is the permitted use table. P is permitted by right. A is administrative use permit, and C is conditional use permit, which is a board level review. And then we also, as far as formatting the use tables, we proposed several columns to be deleted, and you'll see those in your packet. And what I want to just clarify is that the columns proposed for deletion are our plan development district column. This was a confusing column because any use that's permitted in the underlying zone district is permitted in a plan development. So it was confusing, and it almost seemed like there was less entitlement in a plan development than there actually was. And that's not how our code read. It was difficult and it made the table bulky. So staff is recommending removal of that column. In addition, there are two columns relating to our FEC overlay and our hotel overlay. We're recommending deletion of these columns from the use table. The uses are defined in the overlay specific text in the land development requirements. And the way those uses are applied and how they're different from the standard district is very specific. And there's a lot of conditions that involve in that. So it just didn't make sense to have it in a column, and it just added confusion for potential applicants. And then again, we have our land development regulations is our development standards section. We provided additional performance standards for our vehicular and industrial uses, as well as some performance standards for our specialty uses, our new use money business services, breweries and distilleries, microbreweries and microdistilleries, and specialty breweries and specialty distilleries. That concludes my presentation. Staff is recommending approval.
Thank you very much. Okay, Commissioner Hardy, you have a question?
You're muted.
I have two major issues. I'll go backwards. Let's start with the money business services. Money business services are used by a lot of our residents, in particular residents who are sending remittances to folks in other countries, folks who don't have bank accounts, right? So folks who are unbanked use these services. There are reasons why folks can't have bank accounts if you don't have documentation. Also, it's very difficult for poor people to keep a bank account for a number of reasons. So these money business services, while often exploitative, are sometimes the only lifeline that people have to some of these services, right? And so basically, there are some things in here where we're regulating how they operate And I would like staff to walk me through the rationale for the money business, for the regulations here for the money business services.
That be Ms. Cito or William?
Either one.
I can take the lead and William can fill in where any of the blanks are.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly. So as you mentioned, money business services, they can be, I guess, they can exploit the populations that they're serving. In addition, they are some supplementary standards have been proposed because they are higher crime uses. So a lot of the standards do reflect to security cameras, and because of the use, it's a difficult use to live around if you're living next door or you're living in the area. We did require a separation distance of 400 feet. So you can have a money business services on every city block. And in addition, there are quite a few money business services in existing that will be continuing to be existing non-conforming uses. And we wanted to separate money business services from convenience store use, because what we really did is convenience stores will now be either single destination retail or single or specialty food store. So what we wanted to do is allow people who are really serving the community with foods and everyday goods without these other heavy uses that are higher crime uses and really have an impact on a community when they're concentrated. We wanted to separate that out. So we felt like we provided a good balance of walkability and accessibility to the use by allowing for one on every block, but then allowing for people to still get their grocery and some of their necessarily daily items, and more of those types of uses could occur because they can occur separately.
Commissioner Hardy, did you want to follow up?
Yeah, I mean, so, the first thing I'll say is, obviously one wouldn't want to live next to a money business services business, but we have pretty, I don't know how to say it, we zone by use here. We have some downtown areas, some artisanal industrial areas, other industrial areas, some mixed use areas, and then we have residential areas where it's not like, someone's going to be building a brand new single family home next to the barbershop or next to, money business services area. So I recognize that one doesn't want to live next to there, but I don't see that as necessarily a huge issue given the way our code is. And I guess, could you walk me through, you talked about the distance requirements, and I noticed that there's a different minimum distance, of separation for accessory uses versus principal uses. Could you talk about the difference between an accessory use and a principal use, and how the distance requirement would apply for an accessory use?
Sure. I mean, most of what we see in our city are accessory uses of this nature. These
Right.
typically would occur with a retail store or a retail food store, especially would most typically occur with a retail store with convenience items. So that is really most of the time a money business service use that is a principal use. For the most part, I've seen them mostly, again, in suburban conditions and less in urban conditions where they currently exist in our code. I mean, in our city. Those would be like the check cashing store. So again, those are going to have a parking lot and a big sign, and they're really a destination place. People go there and they'll drive there for that particular type of use. But for the most part, for most of what we see and most of the interest is related to the use as an accessory use. That's where we see our demand. And because it is, like you mentioned, a neighborhood use, we do have a population that uses that. The 400 foot was selected because that is our block length. So essentially on every block in downtown, you could have a money business service.
Okay, and so, let me just, walk me, through this here. Let's say there's a convenience store across the street from another convenience store, or down the street from one, or catty corner to one. And one already has some of this money business services kind of stuff in there, and they're permitted and all that stuff. So they're cashing checks, people are able to send remittances, all sorts of other things. They'd be good. But let's say there's one across the street within 400 feet, catty corner within 400 feet, or even next to, and, you know, I'm sure we've seen convenience stores next to other convenience stores, you know, before, and they don't have any of these money business services uses, and they were to try to add that to what they do. Because they're within the 400 feet, we would not give them a permit and allow them to do that.
That's correct. William, you're on mute.
Unmute there, Mr. Waters.
We do have a distance waiver process that could be presented to a board. We have that in place for bars, certain other uses. And so in the instance that you described, if that entity could explain how their addition of a money business service within the 400 feet would not cause a harm to the community or be a nuisance, then the appropriate board could approve that distance waiver.
I get that, but I'm not sure that we've explained or perhaps fully justified that they are nuisances, right? And so, you know, we're putting the burden on the business owner to say, tell us this won't harm the community, when it's not clear to me, outside of perhaps some anecdotal evidence, that these places are, you know, whether the principal uses or the accessory uses are, you know, nuisances, particularly given where they tend to be located. I know there's one in the El Bodegón, for example. I know there's one down the street from here. And, you know, I know that there are, you know, these functions at almost every convenience store. And it's not clear to me that the nuisances that exist in those areas exist because of this, but we're putting this requirement that restricts the activity that can be done in certain areas. And it's not clear to me that we've justified it. And, you know, I guess, you know, for the hours, do we, you know, have we gone to each of the places that do these businesses and asked them what their hours are?
It does vary, and we came up with what we thought would not be great. We have a lot of complaints, both to code and PBSO, about these types of activities happening outside of normal business hours and the congregations of people at these locations, specifically in the downtown arena. So we have a lot of non-conforming, and you also mentioned convenience stores. Under our code today, before these changes, convenience stores were supposed to be 1,000 feet apart. Somehow, at some point, we decided to describe everything that traditionally would be a convenience store is something other than a convenience store. So incorporated in this ordinance are the performance standards for single destination commercial and single destination retail, with some extra standards that will be appropriate for the money portion. We do have issues west of Dixie with these types of businesses.
Okay, so, you know, I get, William, that folks might complain about people lining up outside of business to cash a check or to send money to a relative in a different country. But, you know, I wonder to what extent we have studied the connection between these complaints and actual events that we might want to be concerned about. And, you know, if we haven't done that kind of study and close analysis, and if you know, that kind of study and close analysis hasn't been prevented here, I would be skeptical, or, you know, really reticent to enact, you know, more, you know, restrictions on these businesses. And not that I'm anti-regulation on business, but, you know, the other part of it is, if people are doing these things at a certain hour, clearly there's a reason for it, right? And so, you know, I wonder, by regulating their hours, by making it difficult for people to provide this service to people who are typically unbanked, right? We might be basically responding to calling Karens. Oh, there's a line down the street of people cashing their checks or sending their money, but, you know, the people who aren't, you know, calling code, and frankly, because they're happy because they're able to provide a service, you know, we might be doing a disservice to them. And so I don't, you know, I really want to pump the brakes on this, I think we really need to reach out, in particular to the Guatemalan Mayan community, and in particular to the business owners in this, who do this, and really understand why residents are demanding these services the way they're demanding them, when they're demanding them, and where they're demanding them, right? Like that, I can't support this in the absence of more thought and outreach to the communities that need this service and the business owners that provide it. So that's just my position on the money services. As far as the breweries, distilleries, microbreweries, micro distilleries, specialty breweries, so on and so forth. I'm glad that, we're adding this stuff, but I really think that we should go back to square one with a lot of the stuff. And I'll start with the use table and where one of these businesses can go and where they can't, right? So, when I look at the use table, and I don't know what page I'm on here, but basically, the brewery, distillery, are they allowed in places outside of artisanal, industrial, and IPOP?
Yes.
The brewery.
I'll let William take the lead on this because this was his
Okay.
item. Sorry.
William, please go ahead. Thank you.
A brewery or distillery has no limit on how big it can be. And we've limited to those being in the IPOC and artisanal industrial. Microbreweries and micro distilleries have a state definition on how big they can be capacity wise and thus and so forth. And those are allowed in more areas than that. And the specialty brewery and the specialty distillery are a smaller version that are less intensive, that do not have place the demands on a full manufacturing facility. And that's why that one is allowed downtown.
Okay, so breweries not allowed because they can be really huge. They're not allowed just anywhere. Microbreweries are allowed more places, and I was not able to control F, the use table part. But could you help me out here? Where would a microbrewery and a micro distillery not be allowed?
Downtown in residential neighborhoods. I don't believe they're allowed in mixed use east. Maybe let me pull that up.
Actually, I misspelled. It's not in the plural, so it's in the singular. I'm looking at, so conditionally, mixed use Dixie Highway, mixed use west, TOD east west, and then artisanal industrial and IPOP, but they're not allowed in downtown or any of the mixed use east zoning districts. So if someone wanted to start basically a microbrewery downtown, they wouldn't be allowed to do that?
They can do a specialty brewery.
They could do a specialty. All right, so like, what's the difference between a specialty brewery and a microbrewery?
Essentially, the overall annual capacity of a specialty brewery is 1/2 of a microbrewery.
Do we need to regulate this activity so precisely?
Yes.
Outside, okay, so
We have discussed
talk to me.
the entities that would like to be specialty breweries and distilleries downtown have been presented the performance standards and the criteria, and both are perfectly able to work within those restraints. Both of them also said the size that they were proposing to do downtown, they would not actually reach the maximum production allowed under our code.
So let's take a real world example. Dave Matthews owns Matthews Brewery. And would we call that a specialty brewing company, or would we call that a microbrewery?
They are approved as a microbrewery.
Okay. Now, if Dave wanted to acquire the exact same square footage of actual building, we're not going to talk parking, but of actual building in the downtown, and do that exact same thing that he's doing on South H, on Lake or Lucerne, we would not allow that.
He could, okay. A microbrewery has the ability to do 2 million bottles of production.
Right.
A specialty brewery has a capacity of doing 1 million. So
Right.
Dave Matthews could do exactly what he's doing now. He could only do 1 million bottles of it in
So
downtown versus 2 million where he is now.
I'm wondering what's the harm if, you know, we're talking about the same thing, the same footprint, and, you know, one business is just producing X and the other business is producing X times 2, but there's still an aspect of the business that serves the consumer, you know, who basically comes in, sits there, drinks, eats, yada, yada. Why would we exclude one from the downtown just because it also has the capacity to you know, produce more you know, alcohol?
A microbrewery is not required to have on-site consumption.
But a specialty brewery is not allowed to have the capacity of a microbrewery, whether it has the traditional sit in a bar type of activity as well.
And the shipping and delivery is more restrictive. So there's a lot of things that are, so really the downtown is an entertainment district. So the
Sure.
difference between a microbrewery and a specialty brewery is the microbrewery is more limited. I mean, the specialty brewery is more limited to fit better and operate better in a restaurant bar-based environment. Basically, a specialty brewery or distillery is a bar that does make stuff, okay? Right. Or a bar restaurant that makes stuff.
Right.
Where a microbrewery is more of a brewery that serves people and is fun. And then a brewery and distillery, they just make stuff and they just distribute it. They're a wholesale industrial producer. So
well, I get the differences here. I recognize that as someone strolls through the downtown, we are encouraging some activities over others, right? And I recognize that some microbreweries might not have the sit in and drink and carouse with your friends aspect to them. And I'm not saying that that should be allowed in the downtown. But basically what we're saying is that in addition to requiring someone who's brewing stuff or distilling stuff on site, in addition to the requirement that they have a bar and a place where people can carouse, which I agree with, which affects how people feel and perceive the downtown, we're also adding a restriction that they cannot produce as much as a microbrewery, whether they have that kind of sit in a bar and drink atmosphere or not. And I think what matters more to the functionality of a downtown isn't how much somebody's producing, but whether they have a place to sit inside and drink. And I don't know that the consumer can perceive, right, the person who's frequenting our downtown can perceive that one business has way more capacity than the other, given that so much of that happens, for example, behind the counter. I don't think the average person would have an issue with a Dave Matthews type business that has that kind of production being in the downtown, because they're just looking at a bar and, oh, look, there are some tanks in the background. And as far as the distribution and delivery and all that stuff happens at restaurants too, but it's coming in the opposite direction, right? I mean, so every day or almost every day, a restaurant is getting some sort of delivery, right? And that's the case for all the restaurants in the downtown. And that would probably be the same for a microbrewery that has a bar in it. But it would just be the goods are going in the opposite direction. And so I don't really see a reason to regulate one. But look, I'm not going to win this.
Can we give everyone a chance to speak? I want to make sure that we all have a chance to ask our questions.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Robinson?
Well, regulating the delivery and the larger trucks of distribution could be regulated by hours. And I'm glad to see any lightening up of possibilities of development downtown. My concerns were for payday activities. The reason they congregate is on payday. Because it's safer to send the money overseas than it is to get paid and go back to your neighborhood. a great concern. So I certainly am sorry that we're going to limit the ability to use the money that's earned in the way they want to use it. Does pawn shops, are they considered money business?
They could be.
Well,
Are they considered it?
Well, it depends on how they operate. We don't have one right now that doesn't, it operates as such, but there could be one that would work that way. And one of the issues with the money services and allowing their services to happen in the middle of the night or after a certain period, there's a much higher likelihood of crime because people know those people who don't have banks are walking around with cash, going up to a business late at night, wanting to send money somewhere else, and they get jumped. If it's during the day or more earlier hours, there's less likelihood of the crime being, because we have a crime issue where, and a lot of these people do not report that they're being assaulted or robbed because in many cases they are not here legally. And so we're trying to help them be more safe as well. Having check cashing and transfer stores being able to operate 24/7 is just a recipe for major problems downtown and in the city itself.
So all we're doing is regulating the 400 feet distance and the hours.
Correct.
And the security cameras and the SEPTED requirements. We require additional, we will review it against SEPTED development standards to make sure that the security is maximized on the site for the particular use. And we will require the retention of tapes for 24 hours. I believe it was, we settled on, I can't remember the specific hours, but so there's actually more of the regulations are related to customer security than to preventing the use.
It's a 14-day period for the
so
video.
Is this a loophole for pawn shops to come in?
No.
Okay.
A pawn shop is a separate activity that has to be approved in a different way. It does not preclude that a pawn shop would like to open these types of money services as an accessory, but they would have to meet these criteria in order to do it.
Okay. I just didn't want a loophole for pawn shops to come in as a money business.
Right.
Thank you. Well, I mean, thank you for putting these regulations in. My other concern is payday lending. Is that, what sort of business is that? That's a money business.
That's a money business service. We define that, we use the definition in our code we took from the Florida statutes, and that governs all of those uses.
So we can do a payday lending store. So it has to be free. It can't be anything else but a money lending store.
Yeah, if they wanted to do it as a principal use, it would have to have 1,000-foot separation distance from other money business services as a principal use. So they'd have to separate that out 1,000 feet, which would be approximately a little more than 2 city blocks on average in downtown.
Yeah. But we
don't really anticipate that use in the downtown. I mean, I would see that use being, if they wanted to come in, would be more like on Dixie Highway or maybe mixed use west.
And we're not going to try and stop them.
We
can
legally stop them.
Yeah.
Can we make it extremely difficult?
We're
difficult
putting
than you.
Performance standards in place that provide a level of security for the customer, as well as in an attempt to prevent nuisance activities from happening that would spill over and affect our neighborhoods.
Good. We have statistics on the crime, and we don't, because they don't report it.
Oftentimes they don't.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting close to workshopping, and I know you have do you have a deadline, William, in regards to when these things need to be?
We have 5 different projects waiting for these to be approved.
Okay, are we at, Madam Clerk, are we at the half-hour mark yet, or close to it?
Okay, but they don't include money businesses. These are breweries and distilleries. Good.
Madam Mayor, we're getting close, but we still have a little bit of time here.
Okay. Commissioner
Well,
Maxwell?
Could
Oh,
we
I'm sorry.
distinguish between topics
Thank
for
you.
the workshop? But
I'd like to go ahead and consider a vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hardy?
You're muted.
William, you said that there's a crime issue and that people don't often report the crimes, which I would agree that some crimes are not being reported. But just like I know, that if you go and you're handling cash at a certain time of day, that there's a possibility things could happen, right? And yet people still do it, right? Which, wouldn't that seem to suggest that some people need to do it?
Isn't the hour open till 9 p.m.?
Yes.
9 p.m. Okay, we limit alcohol sales at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, well, this isn't alcohol, this is money.
I'm just saying, for safety reasons.
Yeah, I'm asking William, if we all acknowledge and the commonsensical person knows that there's a possibility of a bad thing happening if I do a thing that I need to do at a certain time, and yet we know people are still doing it, doesn't that seem to suggest that people are doing it because they need to, not just because it's something that they prefer to do?
I can't agree that that's a universal maxim. No.
Okay, well, look, this is me being homo economicus here. If I know that there's a chance I could get robbed because I'm taking my check to be cashed at a certain hour, or I'm trying to send money to a family member at a certain hour, and I do it anyway, I'm doing it because I need to. And I really think that we should go to the people in the community who frequent these things and talk with them and ask them why they're doing the things that they're doing, when they're doing them, and how this is going to affect them. This is very obviously going to affect the service that's provided to largely the immigrant community here in Lake Worth and poor people who don't have bank accounts. We really need to talk to these people before we more heavily regulate the service that is their lifeline. We haven't done that. And I cannot, in the absence of us having done that, there's been lots of talk about taking things to the community in the recent past. In the absence of us having done that, I can't support this. I really, yeah, so can we just take this part out? Can I make a motion? I'll make a motion right now to amend this document to strike lines 726 through 751 and to move those items to a workshop. I wonder if I could get a second for that motion.
We already have a motion and a second, do we not, Madam
This is a
Clerk?
subsidiary motion.
We
To
do.
amend.
Subsidiary motion, go figure. Do I have a second?
Herman's muted.
Motion fails for lack of a
Herman is
second.
muted. Herman was talking, but he was muted.
I have a,
I didn't mute, I don't touch him. Commissioner Robinson?
my hand was up. I had a question about whether we notified the package store businesses when we changed that ordinance.
We haven't changed an ordinance that affects the package store.
We did in terms of single sales and hours.
Not single sales, just the hours.
Are we talking about the package sales for consumption of alcohol? Or are we talking about money services?
We're talking about notification of businesses when we're changing regulations.
Well, they're notified when they apply for a new business license, because as Aaron mentioned, the ones that we have now are.
And the
gonna be-
question was whether we notified the existing businesses when we did the alcohol ordinance.
No, we did not.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Is there a second on that motion?
Yeah,
I believe I asked.
motion fails for lack of a second.
All right, Madam
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes, Vice
I
Mayor
believe
Pro Tem?
I asked well before the 30-minute mark for us to consider taking a vote on this issue so we can move along.
Agreed. So you're, all right, we've got a motion on the floor and a second, the original motion and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're moving on to new business item C. This is the designation of a voting delegate during the Florida League of Cities virtual annual conference on August 14th. Again, virtual. And is there anybody attending that conference? Vice Mayor? Okay.
Yes,
So
I
guess
sit on
what?
that. I sit on that board and I will be attending the 2-day conference via Zoom.
So anyone want to make a motion for the Vice Mayor to be the
So moved.
delegate? Second, anyone? Since he's the only one going?
Second.
Second, there you go. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Okay,
Motion carries 4-1. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
All right, we've got a motion by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Oh, unanimous. Thank you very much. Love to all. Be safe. Wash your hands. Thank you very much.